Welcome to episode 276 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's August 3rd, 1928, Amsterdam. The Olympic Games are still going on. Football has just delivered one of the greatest Olympic tournaments ever. Uruguay beat Argentina after replay. South America has taken over the world stage. And then, inside an IOC meeting, football gets its warning. Not a headline ban. Not yet, but something close to an ultimatum. If FIFA will not accept the Olympic definition of amateurism, or at least allow compliant members to compete under it, football cannot stay on the Olympic program. By 1932, in Los Angeles, football is gone. No Olympic football tournament, and the World Cup has the open road. But how did we get here? Start with Olympic football. Football is there at the early games in messy form. Paris 1900 and St. Louis 1904. Club teams, scratch teams. Not yet the real international tournament. There's the weird 1906 intercalated games I talked about in episode 175. If you've never heard of those, go back and listen. It's a perfect example of football heritage. Then London 1908 gives the Olympic game a clearer shape. National teams, a football tournament organized with seriousness. Great Britain win. Stockholm 1912, Great Britain win again. But the Olympic rule is clear, amateurs only. And football is already becoming uncomfortable with that word, because the game is growing fast. Clubs are selling tickets, players are being paid. In England, professionalism has been legal since 1885. We talked about that 2 weeks ago in episode 262. Across Central Europe, the game is moving the same way. Austria professionalizes in 1924, Hungary in 25, Czechoslovakia in 26. The strongest football in Europe is increasingly outside the clean Olympic amateur settlement. We talked about that Central European laboratory in episodes 13, 52, and 84. Vienna, Budapest, Prague, coffee houses, Hugo Meisel, Mitropa, the Danubian school. This is not just a sporting argument, it's a labor argument. What is an amateur? Can a player be compensated for wages lost while representing his country? That is broken time payment. To the IOC, that looks like professionalism entering through the side door. To FIFA, it looks like reality. Then comes 1924, and then 1928, Uruguay, Paris, Amsterdam. The Olympic football tournament becomes, in effect, the World Championship football does not yet have. In 1924, Uruguay stun Europe. In 1928, Uruguay win again, this time against Argentina. That is not a minor Olympic event. That is world football at full volume. By then, the relationship between FIFA and the IOC is cracking. The Olympic movement wants to protect its amateur ideal. FIFA wants to govern football according to football's realities. And the British home nations add fire. In February 1928, the 4 British associations withdraw from FIFA, deeply unhappy over amateurism and broken time issues. The people who invented the codified game are walking away from its World Federation. Then, on May 26, 1928, FIFA meets in Amsterdam and votes to create its own World Championship, open to all member nations, professionals included, and that becomes the World Cup. So when the IOC meets later that summer, the question is no longer just, what is an amateur footballer? It is, who owns international football, the IOC or FIFA? Now the key meeting. Amsterdam, IOC Session. The president is Count Henri de Baillet-Latour. He opens the football item by explaining what had already happened. In 1927, FIFA had made a proposal to the IOC. The IOC Executive Committee treated it as a nouveau fait, a new circumstance, and allowed football at the 1928 Olympics as an exceptional case. But Baillet-Latour is careful. The IOC had not approved FIFA's amateur rules. It had not approved broken time. It had merely parked the problem long enough for Amsterdam 1928 to happen. Why? Because football mattered. Football drew crowds. Football helped Olympic finances. But the concession was temporary. Now Lord Rochdale, from the British Olympic side, challenges whether the Executive Committee had the right to make that call. Baillet-Latour pushes back. Only an Olympic Congress can decide the principle. The Executive Committee had acted within its powers. Rochdale eventually concedes the point. And then General Charles H. Sherrill of the United States steps in. He says the time has come to settle the amateurism conflict with the international federations once and for all. And that matters, because one lazy version of this story says, even to this day, In the US, soccer just hadn't progressed enough, so football was dropped in 1932. But in the actual record, the hard line comes from an American IOC member in Amsterdam, not from Los Angeles begging for fewer sports. The next days matter too. On July 26, the IOC fixes the next Olympic Congress for Berlin in 1930, and that will be the courtroom for the amateurism case. On July 27, William Garland outlines Los Angeles' plans for the 1932 Games. The Americans talk about wanting European athletes, helping transport, making the Games work. There's no obvious please remove football moment there. And then comes August 3rd. And on this day, 1928, the subcommittee reports back. Sherrill sums up the resolution. The IOC regrets that FIFA has modified its view of amateurism so that it no longer fits the Olympic rules. The resolution also names tennis because the International Lawn Tennis Federation is in a related fight with the IOC, and that is important. This is not only a football dispute, it's an Olympic authority dispute. The IOC says, in effect, we will keep the Olympic conception of amateurism. Only athletes qualified under Olympic rules can compete, and unless FIFA and tennis alter their rules or let the members who do comply take part, those sports cannot be included in the Olympic program. And that resolution is carried unanimously on this day, August 3rd, 1928. Again, this does not technically delete football from Los Angeles on the spot. It is conditional, prospective, a warning, but it loads the gun. And Berlin 1930 pulls the trigger. At the Olympic Congress in Berlin, the strict amateur definition wins by 90 votes to 10. FIFA does not meet the condition, so football disappears from Los Angeles 1932. No Olympic football, no tennis either, and the reason is not simply American indifference. It is jurisdiction, it is amateurism, it is the IOC discovering that football has grown too big to fit inside its rules. But so what? In essence, the IOC wins the legal point, but loses the sport. The Olympic movement protects its amateur definition, but men's football is already moving somewhere else. The World Cup begins in 1930. Uruguay host. 13 teams come. Not perfect, not complete, but it works. We spent July in this port inside that first World Cup story. France and Mexico, the Centenario, Uruguay and Argentina, Rimet's idea becoming real. 1934 proves the next step. Now the World Cup is so attractive that it needs qualification. 32 countries enter for 16 places. Even host Italy has to qualify. The tournament FIFA created because it could not rely on the Olympics now has its own machinery. And football's professional world accelerates. FIFA formalizes its professional section in 1931. Spain and Italy are building national professional leagues. Argentina turns professional in 1931. I talked about that in episode 199. France follows in 1932-33. Central Europe already has Mitropa and the International Cup. The direction is clear. Football is no longer a gentleman's amateur pastime with international ornaments. It is a mass professional sport. And mass professional sports need different institutions. The Olympics never fully recover the old status in men's football. Football returns in Berlin in 1936. Why? Because football sells tickets. The Berlin organizers want it. The IOC wants the gate. FIFA and the IOC find a settlement under amateur rules, but the standard is not the same. Uruguay and Argentina stay away. Italy win the tournament. And after the Second World War, Olympic football takes another turn. The amateur rule creates a new distortion. The West cannot send its best professionals. The Eastern Bloc can send state amateurs, players who are amateur on paper, but full-time footballers in practice. That is what we talked about yesterday with Hungary in 1952. Then the Soviet Union in 56, Yugoslavia in 60, Hungary again in 64 and 68, Poland, East Germany. The Olympics remain important, but for men's football, they are no longer the World Cup. The split eventually produces the modern compromise. By 1984, the Olympics allow professional players, but FIFA still does not want the men's tournament competing with the World Cup. So by 1992, the men's Olympic tournament becomes under 23. Later, 3 overage players are allowed. That is the system we still recognize. The women's Olympic tournament is different. Since Atlanta 1996, it has been a full senior competition. For women's football, Olympic gold still sits close to the top of the international game. For men's football, the hierarchy is settled. World Cup first, Olympics somewhere else. And that hierarchy starts here, in this argument, not with a match, not with a goal, but with committee language, with broken time, with Sherrill, with Baillet-Latour, with FIFA refusing to let football's future be defined by the IOC's past. There's something beautifully bureaucratic about it. The most popular game on earth does not leave Olympic supremacy in a dramatic stadium scene. It leaves through minutes, motions, definitions, and jurisdiction. But that is how sport often changes, not only on grass, in rooms, and with rules. Before we go, 3 things to take away from August 3rd, 1928. First, football was not simply dropped from Los Angeles because Americans didn't like soccer. The decisive issue was the IOC-FIFA conflict over amateurism and authority. Second, the August 3rd resolution was an ultimatum, not an instant deletion. It warned FIFA that unless football conformed to Olympic rules, it couldn't stay on the program. Berlin 1930 confirmed the split. And third, the IOC protected amateurism, but FIFA won the future. The World Cup took over as men's football's true world championship, while Olympic football became a different kind of tournament. On this day in 1928, the IOC told FIFA that football could not remain Olympic unless it accepted the Olympic amateur rules. By 1932, football was off the Olympic program, and the World Cup had room to become the biggest stage in the beautiful game. That is all for episode 276 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by a 17 Laws guy. Did you like my research of IOC's minutes to tell this story? Later this year, I will along the same lines tell the story of how the World Cup really originated. If you subscribe, rate the show 5 stars, and share OTD with your friends, more people will get to know the stories and the history of the beautiful game. Tomorrow, we go to August 4, 1905. Billy Meredith of Manchester City, one of football's first superstars, suspended for 18 months after an attempted bribe. A tale as old as time. See you then.